What's up guys, Ryan here with Treadaway Training. Sometimes when we're on a fat loss diet, we might think that we've hit a fat loss stall when we really haven't. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the difference between these false fat loss stalls and actual fat loss stalls and how to fix them so that we can get back to watching the weight fall right off the scale. And make sure to watch this video to the end because I don't want you to make a change to your diet when it's not needed. The first thing to keep in mind is that fat loss is not linear. There will be stops and starts and ups and downs along the way. Yes, I did say ups. There will be ups. Sometimes you will wake up, you might have done everything right the day before, and then you step on the scale and it's somehow went up. And that may bother you and that may worry you a little bit if you're on a fat loss diet. Believe me, I understand. But it's part of the process. Fat loss, like I said, is not linear. You will not see the scale go down from day to day. Take a look at this chart from one of my clients. This particular client lost 38 pounds in 120 days, which is blazing fast progress. If you'll notice, even he did not lose weight each and every day. In fact, 42 of his weigh-ins, he actually went up in weight. And there was another 10 weigh-ins where the scale didn't change in either direction, it stayed the same. So that's 52 days out of 120 days where he did not lose weight, but he still lost 38 pounds in 120 days. So just keep that in mind and just know that there will be fluctuation on the scale. I want to very quickly touch on a few of the things that can make the scale fluctuate from day to day before moving on to the false fat loss stalls and the actual fat loss stalls like I mentioned in the intro. The first is an inconsistent fluid intake. A gallon of water weighs 8.34 pounds, so just based on knowing that number, it's easy to see how the scale can fluctuate 1 to 2 pounds from day to day just from not being consistent with your water intake. Another thing that can make the scale fluctuate is inconsistent sodium intake. When you have a larger than normal sodium intake on a particular day, it brings extra water and sodium into the cells, and it takes the body some time to pump that water and sodium back out of the cells. And during the time that the water and sodium is in there, then you're going to have a little bit of extra scale weight because of the water retention. Another one is meal timing. Let's say you normally eat your last meal of the day at 7 p.m. But this particular day you might have come up on a deadline at work or whatever the case may be, and you might have eaten at 10 o'clock rather than 7 o'clock. Well, that's 3 hours closer to your weigh-in in the morning that you ate. So there's going to be less of the food you ate digested by the time you weigh in the morning. So that food that's still in your stomach weighs something, so that will translate into an increase in scale weight the next morning. It's not necessarily that you gained body fat, it's just that the food that is still in your stomach weighs something. Speaking of how much your food weighs, food volume is another thing that can make the scale go up and down. An easy example to wrap your mind around is the difference between lettuce and olive oil. 1 tablespoon of olive oil has 120 calories. But to get 120 calories out of lettuce, you would have to eat 2 pounds of it. You would have to eat 2 pounds of lettuce to equal out the calories of 1 tablespoon of oil. So if you're eating a lot of low calorie options like that, where you're having to eat more food, more volume of food to get to your calorie target, then that will translate into some extra weight on the scale because the weight of the food you're eating is greater, which will translate into some added scale weight. Now let's talk about the false fat loss stall. There are 3 main things that can lead to you believing you've hit a fat loss stall when you haven't. The first is elevated cortisol levels. Cortisol is a stress hormone, and as we diet for extended periods of time, our cortisol levels go up. If this is the cause of your scale's stubbornness, then you can try having a refeed day, which is basically a set day where you have a certain amount of extra carbs than you do on your normal dieting days. And if you want to learn more about that, I've linked an article down below that talks more specifically about how to implement a refeed day. The second thing that can lead you to believe you've hit a fat loss stall when you really haven't is actually muscle gain. Any good fat loss plan is going to be including resistance training. And if you're somewhat new to resistance training, meaning you've been working out for less than a year, you're going to be gaining muscle at a very quick rate. And remember that the muscle that you're putting on weighs something. So when you step on the scale, what the scale sees is the body fat that you've lost minus the lean body mass that you've gained. So you might have lost 5 pounds of body fat, but you've put on 3 pounds of lean body mass. So the scale says, well, you've lost 2 pounds. So you might think that you've lost this when really you've lost this. And while this isn't common, I've actually had 2 clients who have lost several inches off their waist without the scale moving a single pound. Which brings me to my next point. You should be taking weekly waist measurements and monthly progress pictures so that you aren't missing any of the progress that you're making while on a fat loss diet. Now let's say you've checked everything off that I've said and you say, okay, yes, I have in fact hit a fat loss stall. What do I do now? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to ask yourself, am I actually eating the number of calories that I think I'm eating? Just because you're accounting for a certain number of calories doesn't mean that that's what you're actually eating. There are 6 common mistakes that cause people to consume more calories than they're accounting for. The first is guessing. Studies have repeatedly shown that we are very bad at estimating calories. One study found that on average, the participants underestimated their calorie intake by 47%. That means if you're guessing that you're eating 2,000 calories, you're actually eating something more like 3,000 calories. 2 is weekend binging. Many people stick to their diet throughout the work week, but then when the weekend gets here, they'll say, well, I've been good this whole week, so I deserve to have a cheat meal at the end of the week. Well, let's run some numbers. Let's say that you're in a 500 calorie per day deficit. This means from Monday to Friday, you build up a weekly deficit of 2,500 calories. Then when Saturday rolls around, you want to go out and have your cheat meal. So you go out, you eat a burger, you eat loaded mashed potatoes, you eat mac and cheese, and you wash it down with a large Coke. I've looked at a few different restaurants' menus and I've come out to an average of 2,500 calories. Congratulations, you have just erased your entire week's progress in one meal. And that's not even counting if you have appetizers, dessert, or if you have alcohol with the meal. Speaking of eating out, number 3 is eating out too often. When you go out to eat, the chef is not counting your calories or your macros for you. That is not their job. The chef's job is to make the tastiest meal possible so that you come back and buy more food. If the chef uses an extra couple tablespoons of olive oil when making your meal, then boom, there's 240 extra calories that wasn't accounted for in what the menu said was in the meal. To help account for this, add a 25% buffer when logging meals that you eat at a restaurant. So for example, if the menu says that the meal is 500 calories, then you'll take 500 calories, multiply that by 1.25, and you'll say that you had 625 calories. Number 4 is bite stealing. Let's say you're walking through the kitchen, you open up the cabinets and you take just one bite of peanut butter, just one bite of cake, just one this, one that. You take one bite. Those calories still count. This may not seem like a big deal, but it can add up over time, and I've seen this alone completely derail people's progress. Number 5 is forgetting. Remember earlier when I said that people underestimated their calories by 47%? Well, a large part of that was because of food that people forgot to log when accounting for their daily calories. The best thing you can do to avoid this is to log everything at the beginning of the day. That way you don't have to worry about it, you don't have to log anything the rest of the day, it's all taken care of and you're good to go. At the very least, log stuff as soon as you eat it. So when you sit down to eat something, just go ahead and log it and have it in there. Don't wait till the end of the day and then have to try to remember everything that you ate throughout the day. Number 6 is bad measuring. Use a food scale whenever possible. Measuring cups are for liquid measurements. Here are 2 pictures that I pulled from my Instagram account. Both of these are great examples of how you can easily eat an extra few hundred calories without even realizing it, just because you weren't measuring properly. And as an added benefit, using a food scale is easier and faster anyway. Now let's say you've gone through all these steps and you're absolutely certain that you're tracking everything properly, there's nothing that you're leaving out, you're accounting for all the calories, and you're still not losing weight. What now? Well, next week I'm going to make an entire video on exactly that topic, so make sure that you get subscribed and hit that bell icon while you're down there so that you'll know when I post that video. You can also go ahead and give a thumbs up if you like the video, and you can ask me any questions that you might have while you're down there. I'll be back next week with another fat loss topic. As always, God bless you and your family, and I'll see you next week.